The stagecoach hit a deep rut and rocked so hard the passengers grabbed the seats like the wood might save them. Then the baby screamed again, louder than the wheels, louder than the horses, louder than the driver cursing up front. The sound cut through the heat and dust and went straight into every man's skull. Two grown men looked like they would rather jump out into the prairie than sit through one more mile of it. It was not the August sun baking the coach like an oven. It was not the dirt slipping through every crack and settling on tongues and teeth. It was the baby, red-faced and furious, crying like the world had betrayed him and everyone inside had to pay for it. The crying did not come in waves. It stayed, sharp and steady, as if the child had made a promise to never stop. The baby belonged to the wealthiest man in the coach. Owen Sutton sat stiff in the best seat, his fine coat too heavy for the weather, his boots still polished under trail dust. He looked like a man used to ordering land, cattle, and grown men into place. But in his arms was a tiny bundle that would not be ordered. The child's fists shook, his mouth wide, his cheeks wet, and Owen's jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped in his face. 6 passengers had left Cheyenne at dawn, headed for Fort Collins. The fare was $8 a person, and everyone felt cheated with every bounce of the wheels. A railroad surveyor named Pruitt sat near Owen, trying to read a manual that never stayed in focus because of the shaking and the screaming. Across from Owen sat a middle-aged woman visiting her sister. An older man slept with his mouth open, snoring through the noise like a talent. And beside the window, quiet as a shadow, sat Vera Buckley. Vera wore a plain gray dress and a simple bonnet. She kept her hands folded tight in her lap, like she had trained herself to take up less space in the world. She stared out at the rolling grass and the distant gray line of the mountains, trying to pretend she was alone. But she was not alone, and her body would not let her forget it. Because Vera knew that cry. The baby's voice turned from angry to thin and desperate, the sound of hunger and panic mixed together. Vera's fingers squeezed until her knuckles went white. Her chest ached, hot and heavy under her dress, and shame washed through her because she knew exactly why. 6 months ago, she had buried her own baby girl, Martha, a tiny child who had lived only 3 weeks. Martha had been too small, too early, and her lungs had never learned how to fight. Vera's body had not understood the loss. It had made milk anyway. It had kept making milk, even after the cradle was empty. She had tried tight cloth wraps, cold water, bitter teas, and long nights of grief. It had eased, but it had not fully stopped. Now, 3 feet from a hungry infant, her body answered the crying like it was a call meant for her. Owen shifted his son and tried the bottle again. The baby turned his head away like a man refusing bad coffee. Owen tried rocking, then speaking low and firm, as if the baby might respect reason. Nothing helped. "Maybe he's got colic," Pruitt muttered, eyes tired and annoyed. Owen did not look at him. "He's been fed. He's been changed. The air is fine." "Well, something's wrong," Pruitt said. "I know." Owen snapped, then lowered his voice as if anger might scare the baby into silence. "I know." Owen was 34, owned thousands of acres, and had fought hard men for water rights and won, but he could not make his own child stop crying. His wife, Caroline, had died during the birth 8 weeks ago. The labor had lasted all day. The doctor had done what he could. There had been too much blood. Caroline had gone cold in Owen's hand while he stared at her and tried to understand how life could break like that in a single hour. Since then, Owen had hired help. A wet nurse from town had come daily, fed the baby and left again, but the day before, she had sent word that her own child was sick and she could not travel. Owen had been left with bottles, goat's milk, and an infant who refused both. That was how Owen ended up on this stagecoach, heading to his sister in Fort Collins, hoping she knew someone who could help, hoping the baby would survive the trip, hoping he could keep from failing the one person Caroline had left behind. At a relay station outside Cheyenne, the passengers climbed out and stretched their cramped legs. The place smelled like horses and old sweat, a few buildings held together by nails and stubbornness. Owen walked in the dirt with the baby pressed to his chest. The child had worn himself down into a shaky quiet, hiccuping like he had swallowed the last of his anger. "You're fine," Owen whispered, bouncing in what he hoped was a gentle rhythm. "You're alive. That should count for something." The baby whimpered and turned his face into Owen's coat. Vera stood in the shade of the station house, watching Owen pace. He moved like a man who knew how to work cattle but not how to soothe a child. Every step was too firm. Every bounce was slightly off. Vera's chest tightened again, and she looked away before anyone could read her face. Back inside the coach, an hour after the relay station, the screaming started worse than before. The baby's cries had sharp edges now, wild and frightened. Pruitt stood up so fast his knees hit the seat. "I'm riding on top with the driver," he said, and climbed out through the front door, choosing danger over noise. That left Owen holding the baby, Vera staring at the window, the visiting woman watching with wide eyes, and the old man snoring like a fallen tree. Owen's hands shook. His face had gone pale under the dust. Something behind his eyes looked close to breaking. Vera felt milk let down in a sudden rush, and she gasped, pressing her arm tight against her chest as if she could force her body to stop caring. She tried to stay in her seat. She tried to stay out of it. But the baby's cries turned thin and hoarse, and Vera could not stand it anymore. She stood. The coach swayed, and Owen's head snapped up. His eyes met hers, defensive and tired, like a man ready to be judged. "He's hungry," Vera said. Owen's voice was rough. "He's been fed." "Not the way he needs," Vera answered. The words hung heavy in the hot, dusty air. Owen stared at her like he did not want to understand. Then he did, and hope and shock moved across his face at the same time. Vera swallowed. "I lost my daughter 6 months ago. My body hasn't forgotten." Owen's breath caught. "You would." He started, then stopped, like the words were too big to hold. "You would do that." "For him," Vera said, looking at the baby, not Owen. "Not for you." Owen glanced at the other passengers. The middle-aged woman stared. The old man kept snoring. Owen reached up and pulled a thin curtain across a rod, creating a small corner of privacy in a coach that offered almost none. Vera sat down behind the curtain, heart pounding. Her hands trembled, but she forced them steady. This was kindness, and it was also something the world would talk about. A widow nursing a rich rancher's child. People would have opinions, and those opinions could ruin a woman faster than hunger. Owen stood on the other side of the curtain, the baby still screaming. His voice came low and tight. "Are you sure?" Vera's throat closed, but she kept her voice calm. "If you hand him to me, you cannot take it back halfway. You have to choose." The baby shrieked again like he was begging for the choice to be made. Owen hesitated for one breath, then pushed the curtain aside just enough, and handed his son into Vera's arms like he was handing over his heart. And Vera knew, the moment that small, angry body settled against her, that nothing about her life would be simple after this. The baby fought her at first. His face was red, his little body stiff with anger, and his cry filled the small space behind the thin curtain. Vera held him the way she remembered holding Martha, careful and sure, supporting his head, drawing him close so he could feel warmth and steady breath. "Shh," she whispered, not because she thought it would fix anything, but because a baby needed to hear a voice that did not sound afraid. "Shh, little one." Her hands moved with quiet purpose. She loosened her bodice just enough, keeping herself covered as best she could in that cramped corner, and guided the baby to where his hunger was pulling him. He resisted for a heartbeat, confused by the change. Then instinct took over. He latched. The silence was so sudden it felt like the whole stagecoach had stopped moving. Outside the curtain, the wheels still rattled and the driver still cursed and the horses still strained, but inside the coach the unbearable noise was gone. It was replaced by tiny, urgent swallowing sounds and the soft rustle of cloth. The air changed. It went from tense to stunned. Vera's eyes filled with tears she did not ask for. Relief hit her first, a physical easing in her chest that made her gasp softly. Then grief followed right behind it. Her body remembered everything. The weight of a baby. The pull of feeding. The feeling of being needed. It was the sweetest pain she had felt in months. She turned her face slightly and cried without sound, tears sliding down her cheeks while the baby fed, like his life depended on it. Maybe it did. On the other side of the curtain, Owen Sutton stood with his back pressed to the coach wall, his hands braced on either side of him as if he needed the wood to hold him upright. His eyes were shut. His breathing came rough and careful, like a man who had just been pulled back from the edge of a cliff. The middle-aged woman leaned toward him and whispered, half in awe, "That's a good woman you've got there." Owen opened his eyes slowly. His voice was low. "She's not mine." The woman gave him a look that said she had lived long enough to recognize a story when it was starting. "Give it time," she murmured, then sat back. 15 minutes later, Vera emerged from behind the curtain, her face composed but her eyes still bright. The baby was asleep in her arms, heavy and peaceful, his fists unclenched, his mouth relaxed. He looked like a different child. Like a child who had decided the world might be worth staying in. Vera adjusted her dress, buttoning herself back up, making herself proper again. But there was no hiding what had happened. Every person in that coach knew. In a small territory, news traveled faster than horses. She held the baby out carefully. Owen reached for his son, and when his fingers brushed Vera's, both of them went still. "Thank you," Owen said. The words sounded rough, like they had to fight their way out of him. Vera nodded once. She did not trust her voice. The baby's hand, even in sleep, tightened around Vera's finger as if he did not want to let go. Vera eased her finger free, slow and gentle, then sat back in her seat by the window, staring hard at the prairie, like she could stare her feelings into silence. The rest of the ride was different. The coach still bounced. The dust still crept in. The heat still pressed down. But the baby slept, and the coach felt oddly quiet, like everyone was afraid to break the peace. Owen kept looking across at Vera when he thought she would not notice. His eyes carried something he did not know how to name. Gratitude, yes, but also a kind of shaken respect, and something else that made him look away fast, like it scared him. At sunset, the stagecoach rolled into Fort Collins in a cloud of dust. Fort Collins tried hard to look civilized. It had boardwalks, churches, a courthouse, and enough saloons to prove that civilization was still losing some battles. People moved along the street with purpose. Wagons creaked, horses stamped, and the smell of cooked food drifted from open doors. Owen stepped down first, cradling his sleeping son. Vera climbed down after him, taking her small trunk from the boot. She stood on the boardwalk, adjusting her bonnet, preparing to ask for directions to the boarding house where her cousin worked. She told herself this was a new start. Work, a roof, a life that hurt less than the one she left behind. Then she heard Owen's boots behind her. "Miss Buckley," he said. Vera turned. "Mr. Sutton." They were careful with their words now, formal, like politeness could erase the intimacy of the stagecoach. "My sister lives here," Owen said. "I'm staying with her tonight. I need to go back to my ranch tomorrow. It's northeast, near the Poudre River." Vera nodded, unsure why he was telling her. Maybe he just needed to keep talking because silence would force him to face how afraid he was. Owen shifted the baby slightly. "He'll need to eat again," he said, voice quiet. "In a few hours. And tomorrow. And the day after." "Yes," Vera said carefully, "that's what babies do." Owen looked at her straight. "I need help." Vera's stomach dropped. She had known this might come. She had tried not to think about it, because thinking about it made it feel real. "The kind of help you gave today?" Owen continued. "I can pay you." Vera lifted her chin. "I'm not a servant." "I'm not asking you to be," Owen said quickly, like he had expected her to fight. "I'm asking you to keep my boy alive. He won't take a bottle. The wet nurse I had can't come. And I've got a ranch 15 miles from town. I can't be in two places at once. His voice tightened. "I'm failing him." The honesty in those words hit Vera harder than any offer of money. Owen cleared his throat like it embarrassed him. $30 a month. Room and board, separate quarters. You would care for him, that's all. $30. Vera had never made anything close to that. In her best months as a seamstress, she barely scraped together 12. Her cousin's boarding house job would pay even less. $30 could change everything. And it could trap her. Vera stared at Owen, at the sleeping baby against his chest, at the way Owen's hands held him like he was afraid the world might steal him too. Vera could feel her own grief like a weight in her ribs, heavy and familiar. "How long?" she asked. "Until I can find another solution," Owen said. "A few weeks, a month, and then you leave if you want, with money, references, whatever you need. No one can say you owe me anything." Vera swallowed. "Separate quarters," she repeated, because she needed something solid to hold on to. "Yes," Owen said. "You'll have your own place." "And I am not replacing anyone," Vera said, voice firm. Owen's eyes flickered. "I'm not asking you to." Vera looked down the street toward the boarding house address in her pocket. She could go there. She could live small and quiet, work until her hands hurt, and try to keep her grief from swallowing her whole. Or she could take this offer, step into a rancher's life, and feed a baby who was not hers, in a house filled with another woman's memory, a house that might whisper about her every time she walked through it. The baby stirred against Owen's chest and made a small sound. Owen's whole body tensed, fear flashing in his face. But the baby settled again, still sleeping, safe for the moment. Vera made her decision with a feeling that was half courage and half exhaustion. "1 month," she said. "After that, we reassess." Owen's shoulders loosened like a rope had been cut. He nodded once, hard. "Thank you," he said, and this time it sounded like he meant something deeper than words. Vera picked up her trunk. "I'll stay tonight with my cousin," she said. "Tomorrow morning, have someone come for me." "I will," Owen said. "Anyone in town can point you to the Sutton Ranch." Vera walked away before she could change her mind. But even as she moved down the boardwalk, she felt the weight of what she had agreed to settle on her shoulders. Because she knew something the desperate rancher did not. Feeding a baby was not the hard part. The hard part was what came after, when a lonely house started to feel like home, and a man who had lost everything started looking at her like she might be the only thing keeping him standing. The Sutton Ranch sat in a wide valley where the Poudre River curved through grass like a silver ribbon. When Vera arrived the next morning in a wagon driven by a quiet ranch hand named Rex, she felt small the moment the main house came into view. It was built from stone and timber, sturdy and proud, with a porch that faced the open land like it owned the horizon. Barns and corrals spread out behind it. Horses moved in the distance, strong and restless. Men worked like ants across a place that never stopped needing hands. Rex set Vera's trunk down at a small cabin set back from the main house. "Boss said you stay here," he said. "Kitchen's got coffee." Then he left without another word. The cabin was simple and clean. 1 room, a bed with a quilt, a small table, a washstand, and a stove. It felt like a safe corner of the world, but it also felt lonely. Vera unpacked slowly. She placed her sewing kit on the table and slid a small wooden box under the bed without opening it. Some grief was private. Some grief was too sharp to touch on an ordinary morning. Then she walked to the main house. She found Owen in the kitchen holding the baby with one arm while trying to heat a bottle with the other. The child fussed and rooted against Owen's coat, already close to crying. "You're heating it too fast," Vera said from the doorway. Owen startled like he had been caught stealing. "I'm not," he said, but his voice did not sound sure. Vera crossed the room and tested the bottle on her wrist, then dumped it into the sink. "It'll burn him." "Start over." Owen watched her hands, quiet, intense, like a man who did not know whether to feel relief or shame. Vera warmed the milk again, slower this time, then took the baby into her arms. The baby refused the bottle, turning away with stubborn anger. Vera nodded to herself. "All right," she murmured, "then we do it your way." She kept her movements calm. She sat in a chair, settled the baby close, and fed him the only way he truly wanted, Almost at once, the child went quiet. His small body softened. The kitchen filled with peace, and Owen stood beside the stove like he was afraid to breathe too loudly. "This chair," Owen said after a long silence, staring at the floor. "My wife used to sit here in the mornings." Vera looked up, careful. "She'd drink coffee and read letters from her family," Owen continued. His voice stayed flat, like he was holding pain behind his teeth. "She died upstairs. The doctor said there was nothing to do, but I keep thinking I should have done something. Anything." Vera did not offer easy comfort. She had learned grief did not like lies. The baby finished and drifted into sleep, his cheek against Vera's chest. Vera adjusted her dress and looked at Owen. "He needs a name," she said gently. Owen's jaw tightened. "I can't, not without her." Vera studied his face. He was strong in every way a man could be strong. But this was the kind of strength money could not buy. "You choose," Owen said suddenly, like it cost him. "You're keeping him alive. You name him." Vera blinked. Then she looked down at the sleeping baby and felt a strange tenderness spread through her chest. "Thomas James," she said quietly. "Both names. That way, he carries both sides of what he lost." Owen swallowed hard. "Thomas," he whispered, trying it like a prayer. Then again, stronger. "Thomas." Life on the ranch found a rhythm fast. Thomas woke every few hours, hungry and loud. Vera fed him, changed him, walked him when he fussed, and sang to him when the night felt too long. Owen tried to help, awkward at first, then learning little by little. He hovered close, watching everything Vera did like he feared forgetting it. One day, Thomas spit up all over Owen's shirt. Vera laughed before she could stop herself. The sound surprised her more than it surprised Owen. It was the first real laugh she had made since Martha died. Owen looked down at the mess, then up at Vera. His mouth twitched like he wanted to smile, but did not trust it. "He's got strong opinions," Vera said, still smiling. Owen muttered, "He takes after someone." The weeks passed. Vera moved through the house more easily. The cabin stopped feeling like a place she was borrowing and started feeling like a place she could breathe. She mended shirts, cooked simple meals, and made tiny clothes for Thomas because he grew fast. Owen worked long days, but he came back to the house at odd times, always saying he needed something for the ranch, even when it was clear he just needed to see that Vera and Thomas were still there. Then one afternoon, Owen returned from town with dust on his boots and a tired look in his eyes. He did not speak right away. He watched Vera feeding Thomas in the kitchen, the baby calm in her arms. "You ever think about leaving?" Owen asked, voice low. Vera's hands went still. "Every day," she admitted. Owen nodded like he had expected that. "And yet, you're here." Vera held his gaze. "Because I made a promise to keep him alive. Because I needed work. Because," she paused, "because some days this feels like the only place I can breathe." Owen looked down at his son, then back at Vera, and something raw crossed his face. "That scares me," he said, "because I don't want you here out of fear. I want you here because you choose it." Vera's heart beat harder. She wanted to ask what that meant, but fear closed her throat. She had already lost too much to reach for something that could break. Owen left the next morning for Denver to handle business. The ranch stayed busy, but the house felt quieter without his heavy steps and his stubborn presence. Vera told herself the quiet was safer. She told herself she did not miss him. She did not fully believe herself. 10 days later, a letter arrived. Rex handed it to Vera with a shrug. "Mail came in from town. Looks fancy." The envelope was cream-colored. The return address was Boston, Massachusetts. Vera's hands went cold before she even opened it. The letter inside was from Jasper Goodwin, a man she had once been foolish enough to wait for. He wrote like nothing had changed, like time was something he could bend to his will. He said he was coming to Fort Collins to claim the life they had once talked about, to make her his wife at last. Vera read it 3 times. Then she walked outside and stood in the yard until her breathing stopped shaking. Anger rose in her chest, hot and sharp. Jasper had asked her to wait 12 years, and he acted like she was still waiting. like she was a thing placed on a shelf until he had time. When Owen returned from Denver, he found Vera in the kitchen with Thomas asleep against her shoulder. Her face was pale and hard. "What happened?" Owen asked. Vera held out the letter without a word. Owen read it once, then, again, slower. His eyes lifted to hers. "You don't want that," he said. "No," Vera replied, "but he thinks I owe him, and I don't know who I am supposed to be anymore." Owen set the letter down. "Then, be who you are now," he said, "not who he remembers, not who grief tried to turn you into, who you are today." Vera swallowed. "And who am I today?" Owen's voice went rough. "You're the woman who saved my son. You're the woman who makes this house feel alive. And when I rode in today, the first thing I wanted was to find you. That's who you are to me." The words landed like a storm. Vera's eyes stung. "I need time," she whispered. "You have it," Owen said. "But don't let a man from Boston decide your life." 4 weeks later, Jasper Goodwin arrived at the ranch in a fine suit and polished shoes, looking uncomfortable the moment his feet hit the dirt. He walked into the yard like he belonged there. Vera stepped onto the porch with Thomas in her arms. "Miss Buckley," Jasper said, smiling like a man sure of his victory. "It's been too long." "It has," Vera said calmly. He took a step closer. "Call me Jasper. We're practically engaged." "No," Vera said. "We're not." Jasper blinked. "But we had letters. We had an understanding." "We had your excuses," Vera corrected, "and my waiting." "That's over." Jasper looked at Thomas. "Is that?" he started. "That is none of your business," Vera said, her voice firm. Jasper's smile tightened. "Vera, be reasonable. I can provide for you. I have a position, a home, a future." "I don't want your future," Vera answered. "I want mine." His face reddened. "You came from nothing. You should be grateful." Vera stepped forward, still holding Thomas steady. "I survived being widowed. I survived burying my child. I survived a life that broke me. I do not owe you gratitude for leaving me to do it alone." Behind her, Owen stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp and ready. He did not speak until Jasper's mouth opened again. "She said no," Owen said, voice flat. "Now you can leave polite, or you can leave the hard way. Either works for me." Jasper looked between them and finally saw the truth he had refused to imagine. Vera was not waiting. Vera was standing. He left the ranch with his pride bruised and his plans ruined. 10 minutes later, Owen found Vera in the kitchen. Thomas slept in her arms, warm and heavy. "He's gone," Owen said. Vera nodded. Then she lifted her eyes to Owen's and let the truth come out clean. "I'm staying," she said. Owen froze. "Because you have to." Vera shook her head. "Because I want to. Because when I think about leaving, everything in me says no. Because this place feels like home. And because, quote, quote," her voice softened, "I want the life we are building, even if it scares me." Owen crossed the room slowly like he did not trust his legs. He stopped close, but he did not touch her right away. "I'm still grieving," he said quietly. "I'll always grieve." "I know," Vera replied. "So will I." Owen's hand lifted and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was careful, like he was asking permission with his fingers. "I want you here," he said. "Not for Thomas, for me." Vera's throat closed. "Then I'm here," she whispered. Winter came early that year. Frost painted the grass white each morning. Thomas grew chubby and bright-eyed, full of loud opinions, especially at night. Vera learned the ranch, and the ranch learned her. Owen learned how to hold his son without fear, how to change a diaper without acting like it was a cattle injury, how to smile without guilt. Months later, when the snow lay thick and the house was warm with lamplight, Owen stood in the small cabin doorway with his hat in his hands, looking nervous, like a young man instead of a powerful rancher. "I'm not good with pretty words," he said. Vera waited. Owen swallowed. "Marry me," he said simply. "Not because it's easy, not because I need you, because I want you, because I want to come home to you." Because losing you feels like losing the last piece of air I have. Vera's eyes filled, but this time the tears did not feel like only grief. I'm not your late wife, she said. I don't want you to be, Owen answered. Vera nodded once, steady, then yes. They married in Fort Collins on a cold December day. It was a small church, a short ceremony, and Thomas cried through half of it like he wanted everyone to remember how the story began. Owen held his son, Vera held Owen's hand, and when the minister called them husband and wife, the world did not end. It kept turning, and somehow it felt kinder. Years passed. The ranch grew, the house grew. Their family grew too, built from loss and stubborn hope. Vera became Thomas's mother in every way that mattered, not by replacing anyone, but by showing up every day. Owen became softer without becoming weak. They fought sometimes, laughed often, and learned that love did not erase grief. Love made room for it. On a summer evening many years later, Vera sat on the porch, watching the sun slide down behind the mountains. Owen sat beside her, their hands linked. In the yard, children ran and argued and laughed. Inside, the house hummed with life. Owen looked at Vera, older now, stronger in a quiet way, and his voice turned low. Thank you, he said. Vera smiled at him. For what? For getting on that stagecoach, Owen said. For doing the unthinkable, for saving my son. For saving me. Vera squeezed his hand. We saved each other, she said. And as the sky turned gold and purple over Colorado, the noise of their life rose around them like music. Vera leaned into Owen's shoulder and let herself hold the moment, because she had learned the truth the hard way. Sometimes the unthinkable thing you do on the worst day of your life becomes the reason your best days exist at all.